Nice hand. Thanks.
Yo, look, I ain't saying that I'm rich, cause if I'm honest, I've never been. But when I look at all these other kids, I feel just a little bit ahead of them. You should know the business is competitive. There's a lot of people that I'm better than. Even veterans ain't got the knowledge I do. I've been reinvesting all I ever spent.
Hey, welcome back to Vader Poker. Appreciate you stopping by for another episode. Last night, and in case you didn't watch last episode, you can click here. You can see we had a terrible session. I mean, everything that could go wrong essentially did. And unfortunately, we were above the 5K mark before the start of yesterday's session. We are now down to 49.50. Just seems like every time we cross over that 5K threshold, something just knocks us right back. Kind of running bad right now. In fact, I just can't seem to put together a string of consistent wins, more than say 2 or 3. Really frustrating. But this is that mental game aspect that you hear a lot of players talk about, and you got to get this part strong because you're going to have patches where you're just going to have these downswings where it's just not going to go your way for 1 session, 2 sessions, 10 sessions. I've had a whole year before of downswinging, so it happens. The key is you got to keep this mentally sharp. You got to have that grinder mentality, and you have to persevere. Poker teaches us to have perseverance and to stick-to-itiveness, if you will, and to keep wanting to just pound the pavement, even though it's not going right for you right now. So that's essentially what we're going to do. So the good news is we are super close to 5K, and I think after today's session, we're certainly going to get over that hump. So we're about to head out to TCH Social. Once again, I know you're probably sick of seeing that place, but hey, it's where I like to go. We'll mix it up here one day soon, I promise. All right, so we're going to be positive, smiles on. We are ready to go. We're ready to do battle once again in the 1-2 streets. We're buying in for 300 once again, and let's see what we can cash out for. It's time to grind.
All right, for these first few hands, we're in a different seat. We're in the 5-hole, and so we actually get a really good view of the flop. And hey, let me know in the comments, do you like it better when I'm sitting in the 5-hole and you get to see the whole board and everything, or would you rather me be in like the 2 or the 7 seat, and that way you get to see the entire board, the action, all those kinds of things, even if the action far away might be a little blurry? Let me know in the comments, what would you prefer, and I'll do more of that content. But we look down on the low jack at pocket 7s after we get one limper from middle position on our right. So we raise it up to $15. Late position calls, and then the limper does something weird and decides to jam for $75. Well, we already raised to 15. We have a pair. This could definitely be like ace queen, ace king, something along those lines. Yeah, they could have a pair of like 8s or something, which kind of can't happen in these situations. Could have aces and be limp jamming, but hey, it's $60 more. We're not going to fold, so we make the call. Everybody else decides to fold, and let's see a run out.
Too many out.
Have full house.
That's the problem. Oh, you dog.
Ace king.
So not a bad way to start this episode, smashing the board with a boat with those pocket 7s. All right, a few hands later, we're in the big blind, and we look down at queen 4 of diamonds. It's a straddle pot. Early position is raised, and there's like 4 callers before it gets to us. This is actually a spot where we should be folding. I know we're getting a great price. It's $10 to win like 70, so why would we fold? But when you have a queen high flush draw, the chances of being overflushed dramatically increase. So although we're getting a great price, it should be a fold. I think this is a mistake to call, but we decide to make the call anyways. And we go to the flop, infinite handed. And the flop's really favorable for our hand. It comes king 8 deuce with 2 diamonds. We decide to check, obviously out of position on everybody, and it checks around. So that's actually pretty interesting. Everybody has capped their range now, except for me and for the straddler. So they probably shouldn't be checking too many pairs of kings here with it being so multi-way and a flush draw on board. So when the turn comes basically a brick, it's the 9 of clubs, I think this is a good spot to lead out. So we lead out for a third pot, trying to get kind of a little bit of a blocker bet, I guess, but also a way for us to just get kind of a cheap look at the river if we do get called. We are out of position on everybody. Who knows? Somebody could be slow playing a set, even though maybe they shouldn't. They shouldn't with this type of board. You just never know in these Texas card games. So we decided to bet a third pot, and only the early position flatter makes the call. Everybody else folds. And then we smash the river with a diamond. So of course we have really no choice but to lead out here. Now our opponent only has about 150, 175, something like that in her stack. She hasn't really played a lot of hands. She's been very, very passive. So I don't want to just put her all in because I'm afraid she's going to fold. So if she does have a king and played it a little funny, or does have two pair, or hey, she might have a lower flush, well, then she's definitely going to call. If she's got a lower flush, she'll put it in, I imagine, and raise. So we decide to bet $100, and she doesn't think about it for too long before jamming for the remainder of her stack. So of course we snap call, and our opponent turns over the nut flush. Got overflushed. Shouldn't have called this pre-flop. Should have just folded. Would have saved $10? No. We would have saved $160 had we just made the correct fold pre. Oh well, moving on to the next hand. All right, a few hands later, we're in the cutoff, and after one limper and a straddled pot, we look down at 8-6 of diamonds, and we've got more diamonds this episode than J-Lo's collection of engagement rings.
Bazinga.
So after a recreational player limps, of course we're going to raise it. So we raise it to $20. The big blind calls, the straddler folds, and then the limper jams for $60. Well, we already made it 20, so I don't see how we fold for 40 when we could be up against ace king, ace queen, something along those lines. Of course, we could be up against a pair like aces or kings or something, but hey, we got a big hand buster too, right? So how can we fold for 40? In fact, we can't fold. We can't really call. So I think there's really no option except to isolate and 4-bet to 130 and try to get this heads up. I don't want to take this three-handed out of position on another individual with a hand that just doesn't really flop that well multi-way. So we decide to raise to 130. After a little bit of deliberation, the big blind folds, and we just brick everything. We just make it rain bricks up in here.
Rain dance! Sandy, come on! White chocolate! Sandy! Raindrops! Old school! T, come out. I'm burning.
Okay, in the next hand, we're on the button, and after a couple of people limp, we look down at Jack 8 suited, and I guess I've learned my lesson raising with some of these suited gappers, and I think over limping's fine. In fact, here in these Texas games, it's probably fine to over limp. Raising, you're probably going to be 3 or 4-handed anyways, although we are on the button, so there is merit to raising here. I just over limp. The small blind calls and the big blind checks, so we go to the flop 5-handed. And the flop's actually not too bad for our hand. It comes 6, 7, 9 with 1 club. Well, something strange happened. The first limper actually leads out for $16. That's like $6 over the pot. It's 160% pot bet, which is pretty weird. It's like, did this person limp in with a huge hand and now is kind of scared of the board and doesn't know what to do, so they're betting big? We do have an open-ended and we have a backdoor flush draw, so I think it makes sense to call one street, see what happens, and evaluate turn. So that's what we do. Everybody folds. Now we're heads up going to the turn. The turn's actually pretty favorable for our hand. It comes the 4 of clubs. Now we have an open-ended and a flush draw. So when the flop better checks to us, I think we have nothing to do here but bet. We've turned a ton of equity. If they do some weird check raise or something, I think we can call and see a river. But hopefully we can just take this down here. So we bet 35. And after hemming and hawing for a little bit, the initial better decides to fold. And we take this one down with Jack high. All right, who's ready for a big bluff? So we look down at ace 5 of diamonds. Under the gun 1 limps, we're in middle position, so we decide to raise to $15. The cutoff 3-bets to $45, and then the small blind calls out of position. That's usually indicative of like 8s, 9s, 10s, something like that. He also didn't have that big of a stack, so I really didn't want to 3-bet, because if I do 3-bet at this point with a $35 raise, I've got to make it like 120, and I only have about 173, I think, around 200, 225, something like that in my stack. So 3-bet would essentially be jamming here as I'm committing my entire stack, and I really didn't feel like doing that with ace 5 when the small blind cold flats a 3-better, which again, usually indicative of 9s, 10s, something like that I think absolutely would call if I decided to jam. So we decided to go ahead and flat, and we're going to this flop three-handed. And the flop actually really, really good for our particular hand, and actually pretty good for a 3-bet caller's range as well. It comes 7-4-3 with 2 diamonds, so we have an overcard, maybe. We definitely have a gut shot to probably the nuts, and we have the nut flush draw. Small blind checks, we check, and the cutoff bet's $35. Small blind decides to call, and I think this is an excellent opportunity to go for a semi-bluff here and take down all this dead money in this huge pot. And if I get called by, say, a pair of 9s, which is what I think the small blind has or something along those lines, and we just have so many outs, we're actually a favorite against a single pair hand. Even if somebody has top set here, we still have a ton of outs with the flush draw and the double gutter. So we have 15 outs twice. So I have no problem jamming this hand, but everybody folds, and we take it down with ace high. In the next hand of note, we once again have diamonds. What did I tell you about the diamonds theme? Am I right? So we have ace jack of diamonds in early position. We're the initial opener, so we make our standard open to $10. Middle position and low jack call on our immediate left. And then the cutoff decides to 3-bet to $55. Now the cutoff seems like a thinking player, definitely does not look like a recreational to me. So this 3-bet could be trying to pick up this dead money. I have an option here of 4-betting, which I think is probably what I should have done to something like 150 or something along those lines. But, you know, I am suited with a pretty good ace. I could have the best ace here. He could be doing this like ace 5 suited, something like that. So I do want to keep those hands in some of the time. So I don't know. I'm kind of mixed here. I think folding's just definitely not the right option with, you know, suited broadways like this. So I decided to make the call and the flatters fold. So we're going to the flop, a true heads up. And that flop comes real favorable for us. Once again, we have a diamond flush draw with the 5-5 deuce with 2 diamonds. We check to the razor, and the cutoff bet's $50. So I think it just makes sense to call here. We want to keep in worse aces. We have the nut flush draw, and if they have like 10s or something, we've got overcards. We just have tons of equity. So I think calling makes the most sense. And then we smash the turn with the 4 of diamonds, and of course we check, and our opponent checks back. So this is a really good opportunity for us to bet really big on river and make it look like, you know, we just missed something, or we're trying to turn ace high into a bluff, or we're turning a smaller pair into a bluff that may have a diamond blocker, something like that. With him checking back, you know, our range is just pretty wide open here. We don't have to have a flush. So with a pot size bet of around 225, I think it makes sense just to grip it and rip it. So we jam, and after our opponent tanks for quite some time, don't worry, I sped it up for you, so it won't take too long. Our opponent decides to make the fold.
Okay, I have the tip for both of you.
Okay. What are you going to do? Still a pretty good sized pot. We'll take it down with the Nutter Butters.
Nice hand. Thanks. Fucking awesome.
On to the next one. In this next hand of note, we finally pick up a big hand. We look down at 2 red queens. And it's a straddle pot. And we have a limper on our right. So what a great spot to be in. So we raise to $25. It folds to the straddle calls, and the limper decides to call. And now we're headed to this pot 3-handed for almost $100. Love Texas poker. And that flop, although has an ace, is actually not the worst thing for our hand because it does come 3 diamonds. What a surprise. And of course, we have the queen of diamonds in our hand. So I don't know. I could bet here. It's a monotone board. It is ace high. We are multi-way. So I think check is probably fine. If somebody does bet, we can certainly call. So we check, and it checks around. The turn brings the king of diamonds. Now they both check to us once again. And with 4 diamonds on board, and we have the queen of diamonds, I think we can bet a little bit here and try to get a call out of, you know, an ace or another diamond or something like that that just might be getting a little bit sticky. So we bet $25, which is a third pot. The straddle calls and the limper folds. The river brings the ace of spades. Oh, this is perfect. So now if they have an ace, I don't think they're folding. So I can size up just a little bit here. So I decided to go right around half pot at $70. And after our opponent tanks for a little while, they make the call. We say flush, and we turn over our hand, and we're good. And we take this one down, which feels pretty good after this roller coaster of a session. Okay, gonna try to get an end of day session here. What a roller coaster like today. I could not get over the $500 threshold. Every time I got up to 500, back down. Up to 500, back down. Up to, you know, finally cashed out for 510 for a nice profit today. And by nice, I say that sarcastically. Very small profit of $110. Yeah, that's like 15 or 18 bucks an hour.
That ain't gonna cut it. We ain't getting to 10 grand at $100 a session. But hey, profit's profit, I'll take it. Just 18 bucks an hour is what kind of sucks, to be honest with you. But tomorrow is my last session for the week, and then I have my son from this Thursday through Sunday. So then we won't be back at it until next week. So tomorrow's one more session. Really could use a big one, you know? Let's see if we can do that tomorrow. But till then, it's time to get some rest. Time to work a little bit tomorrow. Got some work I gotta do. And then tomorrow we're back on the grind, y'all. Peace.
Yeah, I'm shining bright, got me feeling like I'm next up. Feeling like I'm Curry, how I'm ballin' on the West Wall.